Hey everybody, it's a time of the week where we like to bring an expert onto the Longhorn Confidential podcast who knows a thing or two about the team that Texas is playing this week. So since Vanderbilt will be coming to town this weekend, 11 o'clock over at DKR, we knew we had to talk to Aria Gerson over the Tennessean. Aria, what, 5 years now you've been at the Tennessean? How long?
About 4.5 years. Yep.
4.5 years. She's a Michigan grad. You can find her on Twitter at Aria_Gerson, Gerson. So give her a follow this week and get all your Commodores comments. I'm actually dressed today in Aria's honor. I know she loves minor league baseball, so I had to wear my hometown team, rep the Billings Mustangs. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about baseball sometime in the podcast because Aria is one of the best college baseball writers we've got in this country. But football first. This weekend with Vanderbilt coming to town, Vanderbilt is 7-1, 3-1 in SEC play. I was looking it up. Your first year on the beat, I think Vanderbilt was 2-10. So that was not that spectacular to watch, but 7 wins last year. They're 7-1 this year, as we mentioned, ranked 9th in the AP poll. College game day was on campus last week, so there's lots of excitement. How have the Commodores kind of handled the success and the expectations and the hype? How have they handled that pressure? What's the vibe around campus these days?
They've handled the hype really, really well. Really their only blemish this season was against Alabama when they went on the road and lost to Alabama. I don't think there's any shame in losing to Alabama on the road. It was a little bit, the way that it happened was a little bit concerning just because Vandy had a couple of really bad turnovers. Diego Pavia was kind of playing hero ball in the second half a little bit too much. But, ultimately that was just that one game, and they came back and faced LSU and Missouri at home, won both of those games in very different ways, actually. And so that has kind of been, if there's been any issues, they've mostly been able to bounce back from that, and they don't seem to have really gotten too absorbed in their own hype.
Are people excited about? We all remember the scene last year when they beat Alabama and the students are carrying the goalposts around town and all that stuff. But are people kind of bought into what Vanderbilt is selling? Are the games packed? What is the excitement level around Nashville, a city that like Austin has a lot of other things you can do on a Saturday?
Yeah, there's definitely been a higher level of buy-in than I've seen for football at any point. It's still been not 100% there just because a few of the games, especially their LSU game, a large amount of the fans at that game were LSU fans. They have sold out, I think, all but one home game this year. But again, there were a few of those that had a lot of opposing fans still, although not as bad as it has been in past years. A lot of those fan bases have people that live in Nashville, so it's hard to keep them from buying tickets, even if you were to, geotag it or something like that. A lot of them just live there. So that's always going to be, I think, a little bit of an issue. But definitely the student engagement has gone up. There's a lot of hype for College Game Day that are getting really good TV ratings as far as, they've been on ABC, they've been on ESPN several times already this season, which they had not. They'd only been on ABC once in like the last 3 seasons, I think, before this year. And they've been on ABC. This will be the third game that's on ABC for Vandy this year. So, people are watching them on TV. More fans are showing up to games. Fans show up to College Game Day. And so I definitely think it's going in the right direction as far as a fan engagement standpoint, and fans enjoy watching this team.
What do you think constitutes a success for this team? Are we already there? Is it 9 wins? There's Texas, Auburn, Kentucky, and obviously Tennessee left on the schedule. Is it the CFP or bust? I mean, what constitutes success for a team that I think going the season, people expected them to be all right, but maybe not what they've been so far?
Yeah, I think I will admit my preseason prediction for Vandy before the start of the season was for them to go 7-5. I think the expectation was for them to be better than the 6-6 that they went last season, which they've pretty much already done that. And so I think, obviously you don't want to go and lose to Kentucky or a team like that. Probably Auburn would also fall into that boat. But I think as long as they win those 2 games, even if they lose their remaining games, I think that's still a success for them because they've never had a 10-win season ever. And so to even get close to that is, even a lot of their 9-win seasons in the past were 9-4 seasons that, required a bowl game to get to 9, or they were back in like 100 years ago. So to even get close to that, I think is a resounding success, regardless of whether they make it to the playoff or not.
We talked about you mentioned Diego Pavia. You can't really talk about Vanderbilt without talking about the quarterback number 2. He's lived up to the hype. He's been at his advertised these past 2 years since he got here and kind of blew up in that Alabama game. He's currently kind of settled in that 4 or 5 range and follow the Heisman Trophy odds. Is that legit? Is he a legitimate Heisman Trophy contender in your eyes?
I would be surprised if he won the Heisman, just because I don't think he's quite putting up the numbers that somebody like, say, Fernando Mendoza is at Indiana. I think, he's had quite a few turnovers this year, which will probably hurt him as far as actually winning the Heisman goes. But I wouldn't be that surprised if he finished in the top 5 for sure.
I have a Heisman, though, and we were talking about this the other day with some other guys. And yeah, if Vanderbilt can make a way to the SEC championship game, he might get my vote just because that was something that not a lot of us expected. And he's kind of Steve Sarkisian referred to the tip of the spear. So that would definitely, I'm sure, garner some, that narrative at least would garner some votes. Who is another name to know on this Vanderbilt offense?
Well, one name that some Texas fans might already know is Cedric Alexander, the running back. He's from Austin, was an LBJ high school guy. He's their top running back. Now, Vanderbilt they go everything by committee, receivers, running backs. Pavia runs the ball himself a lot too. So Cedric and their other running backs don't necessarily put up huge yardage numbers, but the run game is really important to everything that Vanderbilt does. And Cedric is their top guy when it comes to running backs. And then Eli Sowers, the tight end, is a top NFL draft prospect, one of the top tight ends in the draft this year. He's Pavia's favorite receiving target, really big guy, great in the red zone. He's that guy who is really one of their go-tos. They have a few other good receivers as well. But like I said, it's kind of more, they spread the ball around. So you won't necessarily see one guy putting up 100, 200 yards in a game. But the offense is effective by going to a lot of different weapons.
We were talking to Cedric this summer at a youth football camp. This date was circled on his calendar. He was looking forward to playing in front of family and friends this week, as most people would. How about this defense? Obviously, Clark Lee, he's a defensive guy by trade. Who's a guy on this defense to kind of keep an eye on?
I think one of the top defenders this year has been Corday Sidnor. He transferred from Purdue ahead of the 2024 season. This is his second year at Vanderbilt. He's been really disruptive this year in the pass rush. Again, Vandy's kind of a team on defense where they have a lot of guys who are really good. They don't necessarily have one guy that does everything for them, but Sidnor has been really good this year. And then another name is CJ Hurd, who is the safety who transferred from FAU. And he's made some really big plays, including at the end of the Missouri game last week when he forced a fumble where he literally just ripped the ball out. Didn't even make a tackle, didn't even make a hard hit. He just ripped it out. So that's the kind of player that he is. He just plays really hard and he will fight for the ball constantly. And I think CJ Hurd has exceeded people's expectations from when he transferred from FAU as well.
All right. That's enough football. Let's talk a little baseball because I know how much you love that sport, and obviously covering Vanderbilt's a pretty big deal, both for the Tennessean and in college baseball. But Vanderbilt in Texas 1-2 in the NCAA tournament last year, and neither made it past the regional. So both really good regular seasons. You can still constitute as somewhat of a success, but disappointing ends. What has the offseason been like with Tim Corbin's crew, and what should Texas fans expect when we all head up to the fans and hopefully me as a media member? Hopefully I'll get to go on that trip up to Nashville in April for that series.
Yeah, well, I think this won't be a surprise to anybody, but I think Vanderbilt's pitching looks really good again. They return a couple of their rotation arms from last year, most notably Connor Fennell, who became famous for just standing on the mound waiting for hitters to get in the box because he wants to work really fast. So he is probably going to be their top pitcher this year, but there's a bunch of newcomers as well that are really exciting. Their freshman class has a lot of really exciting young arms, including one who hit 100 miles an hour in a scrimmage a couple weeks ago. but I think they have 4 or 5 freshmen who are going to contribute on the pitching side, plus a transfer, Nate Taylor from Georgia. So the pitching should be really good. The offense is, more the area that they've kind of struggled in the past couple years. And it's going to be incumbent on a couple of younger players to really take a step forward. In particular, Brody Johnston, who is an electric power hitter who hit 15 home runs as a freshman, but just needs to get a little more consistent with his plate discipline, his batting average, and whatnot. And if he and Braden Holcomb, who kind of sat out a lot of the fall, but it's not a major issue, like injury issue or anything with him. If those two can be like legitimate middle of the order guys, that'll help their offense a lot, because they brought in a lot of transfers who are more kind of on base type guys that maybe aren't super huge power hitters, but who have strong on base percentages and are really experienced. So I think the hope is that they can kind of combine those on base skills with the power of Holcomb and Johnston. But we didn't get to see a lot of all of that put together in the fall because some of the guys were sitting out some of the fall.
Overall, what is it like? I get it a little bit, but I guess this is my first year on an SEC baseball beat. But what's it like being an SEC baseball writer, especially for a school where people really care about the baseball program? This isn't, Missouri, nothing against the Tigers. The Vanderbilt baseball might be bigger than Vanderbilt football on that campus. What is it like, covering a baseball team in the SEC, for a newspaper like you do?
Yeah, SEC baseball is really just, it's hard to describe for people who don't know about it. And, with Tony Vitello getting hired by the Giants actually recently, I kind of realized that a lot of people have no idea the intensity of SEC baseball, the intensity of the rivalries, especially. I can run through a list like every single year when Vanderbilt played Tennessee, all the incidents that happened, all the things that happened, because every year there was something, one player taunting another player, like controversies, ejections. It's just really intense every single year, every single series. And you get the best matchups a lot of the time because all of the SEC teams, you only play the 3 SEC games per week. So every team will start their best pitchers on Friday nights. And so you get to see those matchups. And sometimes those guys end up being in the majors quite quickly. We've already seen Jack Caglione, Chase Burns, guys like that in the majors, Paul Skeens. Those are all guys that I watched like 2 years ago. So, you never know when you might be watching a guy that's going to be in the majors in like a year, which is really cool as well, knowing how much more willing MLB teams have gotten to call these guys up. But really, it's just the atmospheres are incredible, and the rivalries are something I really think you don't get as much in MLB. There are rivalries in MLB, but it's not anything like what the rivalries are in the SEC.
Absolutely not. Before we get you out of here, the most important question of the week: what's your favorite Halloween candy? Since you're going to be spending Halloween with us in Austin, what are you going to try to snag while you're down here?
Yeah, I really like Nerds gummy clusters. I know this is a pretty common answer, but I love Nerds gummy clusters. I try to go after their limited edition, fall flavors, Halloween flavors when they have those available.
We're a candy corn family over here. I know that's not a popular choice, but it is what it is. But that's Aria Gerson at the Tennessean. You can follow her at Aria_Gerson on Twitter. Vanderbilt plays Texas at DKR this week at 11 o'clock ABC if you're watching back in Nashville or you're not making it down to campus in Austin. But if you see us down at the stadium, be sure to say hello. And Aria, we appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Jesus.